Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Chapter 1095 review. I hope all of you guys have been well. I see all of the usual suspects in the chat. Welcome, everybody. All the mods are here today. It looks like everyone's hyped to talk about this chapter. I definitely am, because I'm sorry to spoil the party for anyone that doesn't know, they didn't see the community post or anything, but I have read the chapter already. I was not available this weekend to do a stream, so I read the chapter on my own, and today we are going to be talking about the chapter. And I know that might be disappointing for some who were hoping to get my reaction, but I think I have something better. This weekend I've been doing a little bit of theory crafting with this chapter, and I will say there is a lot of stuff in this chapter, but we'll get to that in a bit. Thank you, Gus. He said the cardigan looks fire. Thank you. Appreciate that. This is one of my favorites. I got the glasses on. Got the cardigan on. I'm going professor mode today, folks. I'm in professor mode right now. I'm about to give you guys a dissertation on chapter 1095 and why this chapter is awesome. So I hope you guys are ready for that. Let me do some catching up while people roll into the stream and get in here. Let's do some catching up. How's everyone else doing? How was your week, guys? How was everything aside from One Piece, aside from the chapter? What's new with all of you? Have you done anything? You know, all my accountability guys, it's on the back of the board here. We're going to be using the front today. How you guys been doing? You've been working towards your goals? You've been doing your stuff? I hope to hear good things. Yes, Rubik's, this chapter is chock full of theory fodder, my friend. I got the apple juice prepared for this one too. I mean, you know, I already know what's happening in it, but we gotta have a discussion about this stuff. This is a lot to talk about. Yeah, fertile chapter. Man, I'm telling you, I was just brainstorming. I was sitting down looking at this chapter. I was brainstorming like all the stuff we could talk about with this one, and it just kept coming. Honestly, I might have to. I've been working on the Wano critique, but I might put that on the back burner just so I can get this theory out. We're gonna talk about some of it today, but I have a lot of stuff that's been born out of this specific chapter. And I almost want to get them out while the fire is still hot, you know, while the pan's still hot or whatever, or the stove. I don't know what the saying is, but point is, yeah, there's a lot to talk about here. I have a few different theories from this chapter that aren't all related to the same thing. I looked at the official chapter today, Viz, so we're gonna actually have both for reference. I didn't notice too much change between these interpretations. I mean, there's some lines that are a little bit different. The title of the chapter, I think, in the Viz version is more appropriate based on the fact that it's kind of quoted directly in the chapter later. But we'll talk about that as well. I did tear up, Katha. I did. Kuma's backstory is, as I thought, going to be one of the most pain and suffering filled backstories in the story. I knew it from the beginning, and I knew that when we saw that little snippet of it at the beginning of Egghead, I was like, fuck, man, this is gonna be a painful one to get through, and not in a bad way where it's like hard to read it, but in like man, it's bringing the tears out, it's bringing the emotions out. I feel like Oda hasn't hit this emotional note for me in quite a while. Wano didn't really do it for me. I don't think there was any moment in Wano that comes to mind that hit me the way that, let's say, the Rocinante or Robin flashbacks did, or there's some, even not in the flashbacks, there's some moments in the present that hit really hard too. You know, Sanji and his family, all that stuff in Whole Cake Island. There's a lot of emotional moments that connected with me in the story, and I don't think Wano gave me that over the last few years, and this is kind of doing that for me now. Egghead's really hitting emotional high notes for me that I feel like have been missing from the story for quite a bit. Bonnie crying, like, please don't hurt my daddy, all that stuff, that was, intense earlier in the arc. Then we got that little view into Kuma's flashback, and that was like really, that was a rough flashback too. That's like, that's a emotional one. And now we're getting this, and it was a doozy. I will say, before we get into the meat and potatoes of everything, based on how this chapter ended, I'm pretty confident we are going to be getting most of the God Valley flashback through the perspective of Kuma. And I think it's a really interesting twist that, you know, you would think we get the God Valley flashback, or like the initial look at God Valley and what happened there. I'm pretty sure everyone's guess was that it was going to be, let's say, through the eyes of like Shanks. Let me adjust the volume here on my headset. Shanks, Blackbeard, Rox, anyone that we had already pinned as being at God Valley. You know, we were expecting to get it through them. And I remember when the Kuma flashback first started, we got that little bit of it. I remember thinking, is it possible that Kuma was at God Valley, and that, you know, that God Valley is where they bring, let's say, you know, some of the slaves, or where they make slaves, or where they make warriors, or maybe the God Knights they come from God Valley. Turns out that was wrong, but Kuma does have a God Valley connection, and now we're seeing it, and we're gonna probably see a lot of this flashback through his eyes. So I think that's really interesting. Chaozu said, I put in some time towards my goal, minuscule, but I did my best. That's awesome, man. As long as you did something, even a little bit is better than nothing, man. One step at a time. But I'm glad to hear that. Caden said, I'm on fall break from college, so I'm big chillin'. Hell yeah. Nice, enjoy your break. Vulcan said, I've worked on my bachelor thesis. Beautiful. I'm glad to hear that. I'd never written a thesis paper myself. I mean, at this point, I've practically written a thesis paper on One Piece, combining all my scripts together, but I know that's a lot of work, so that's good shit, man. Tazmorn said it's between Kuma and Sanji for worst backstories, like the most sad ones. Sanji's pretty sad, but I don't know. Something about it didn't connect, or like didn't hit me as hard as Law's flashback did. I still think Law's flashback is probably the most sad one in the story. That or Robin's. Those are the top two for me. I can't think of one that made me cry legitimately aside from those two. Out of the flashbacks. I still get teary-eyed whenever I get to Marineford. But out of the backstories, for me, Robin and Laws have always hit the hardest. They're really brutal stuff. The world government, they can suck my nuts, man. They're they're a bunch of douchebags. Yeah, Ruben, that's a good point. Technically, Shanks was still a toddler, so I don't think we could have gotten his perspective. Yeah, that's true. You're right about that. All right, so let's just dive into it. I don't want to waste any more time. I want to actually get into the thick of it here. So the plan for today is going to be, we're going to go down the chapter. We're just going to go page by page. I'm going to use the TCB version because it's just bigger and clearer. We're going to go page by page and talk about interesting details or theories that have come from, let's say, certain lines and things like that. And I think what I want to get out of the way now is that today, all these theories are going to be dependent on one big thing. And I think the word of the day for today's stream is going to be implications. That's the word of the day, folks. Implications. This chapter has a lot of them. There's a lot of implications in this chapter. Stuff that's not said outright, but it has a bearing on how we interpret certain details in the story that we may have looked at a different way up until now, that we may not have fully... You know, I'd imagine a lot of you guys out there read the chapter and probably did some of this yourself. You tried to put together some theories, things like that. So some of the things I might be saying today, you might have thought of already, that might have already come to your mind. But for those that haven't really put too much thought into this chapter, I think you'll be surprised to see how many little tidbits of information we kind of get from the various character dialogues. All the things like the things that Saturn says in this chapter, I think are very important and hold some implications for the Gorosei and the nature of the world government. The new race, we're gonna get to that. We gotta talk about the Buccaneers. There's a new race in One Piece that has been introduced this chapter, and they're called Buccaneers. And that's gonna be the segment that I think takes a little while to cover because there's a lot going on there. There's a lot going on with the Buccaneers, even behind the scenes, in the influences, the actual real life equivalent of Buccaneers, or where the word comes from. I think there's some intentionality behind that, and it connects to various characters in the story, not just Kuma. And I think some of you might have already figured out who, but we'll also be getting there. So let's start with the cover request. This is just a funny thing. I wrote in my notes here, Buggy's nose can come off. Obviously, I think the way that works is that it's his Chop Chop fruit. His nose is literally coming off with the Chop Chop powers, but I just thought it's funny that, is it possible that Buggy's nose is fake? Does it come off here? Is that a real nose behind his hand? Is Oda doing that for a reason? So that's, in my opinion, the biggest theory this chapter, is whether or not Buggy's nose is actually fake, and he's been faking this self-conscious attitude he has about his nose this whole time. But I'm just kidding. Obviously, he's had it ever since he was a kid. But moving on past the cover page, okay? So the first thing that we get in this chapter is Saturn is like spawned in. He's spawned into Egghead, and we have all the Marines running away, and we have this announcement here. This is the first implication of the chapter that's important to make a note of. Saint Saturn of the Five Elders has landed. All Marines beneath the ranks of Rear and Vice Admiral are to evacuate the area immediately. Now, if we go to the Viz, let's see how that's translated. It's pretty much the same. Saint Saturn has disembarked. All units but Vice Admirals and Rear Admirals maintain distance from the island center. So, a little bit different. These guys this translation says to evacuate completely. This one says just stay distant from the center of the island. But what I think the real important implication here is that Rear Admirals, people of the rank of Rear Admiral or higher, apparently already have some level of awareness of the Gorosei's transformations and their true nature, or at least they're allowed to. So I'd always anticipated the reveal of the Gorosei's forms being a well-kept secret in the world government, something that, we saw it in the Sabo chapter. We saw the Gorosei transform. It wasn't exactly clear, like, had anyone seen this before? Do they do this, like, regularly? Have they transformed, in any other situation? Who knows about this? Who knows about the monsters that are in the world government, the Gorosei? It seems here, the way that it's set up is that, actually, if you're a Vice Admiral, there's a possibility you might already know this information. You might already know that Saturn is a big spider cow monster, okay? Which is interesting to me, because you might even, those who watched my Akainu video, that's a recent video, that was only 2 weeks ago, I think. But yeah, like two-ish weeks ago, not long ago, and in that very video I was talking about how I'm not, like, I didn't think Akainu knew about the true nature of the Gorosei and Imu. Now I'm starting to wonder if Imu is the only secret, and the Gorosei, this whole deal with the Gorosei here, being monsters or whatever, that might already be common knowledge in the Marines. Akainu might already know about that. Which really puts his back talk into perspective. The fact that he was talking back to the Gorosei really puts it in perspective, because you're like, okay, if he knows about these transformations, about their strength and power, and he's standing up to them and talking back to them, that also means he has steel nuts. So I gotta say, credit to Akainu there for doing that. But the big thing here for me is, like, we might have had the wrong idea, that maybe the Gorosei transforming is much like Sengoku turning into a Buddha, where it's like, they all knew about it. Sengoku had this power. It wasn't like a secret or anything. We, as the viewers in the story, just haven't been the ones to see it. And low-ranking Marines not being allowed to see makes sense. An alternative interpretation of this that you could make is that maybe it's like a hockey-related thing, where, like, if you're below a certain rank, you're too weak to be in the presence of a Gorosei, especially in his transformation. Like, if you have shit hockey and you were here, there's a chance it could knock you out, it could kill you, whatever. So that's another way you could take it. But these Marines here are clearly looking at Saturn. They're clearly looking at him. I'm assuming they're of the appropriate rank, because Saturn isn't killing them or anything. But yeah. So that's something to think about there. That the Gorosei might not be as secretive about their nature as we thought. So that's really cool. I had something on my mind I wanted to say. I completely forgot. Let me see if I can remember. What's up, Kev? What's going on, guys? Oh, yes, I remember now. We have 38 likes, 147 viewers. Let's get that ratio a little bit closer. Please like the stream, guys, if you like the analysis so far. If you want to just support the channel, please like the stream. It takes a single click, and it helps me out very greatly. D. LaJoy Boy, thank you for the $5 super chat. He said, have we talked about the possible prizes, fruits in the 6 chests, possibly Kumas, Kaidos, Ivankovs, etc.? We're going to get to that. So all the theories, have we talked about this? Let's save that for when we get to it. I'm going bit by bit through the chapter. But yes, I do think that there are devil fruits inside those chests. I've thought about it, and the people that are at God Valley currently, it would make a lot of sense to me if the way that they all got their devil fruit powers was from the rewards of this event. But we're gonna get to that. So next we have this little bit of information, this little reveal here, that Saturn actually could have dodged Bonnie's attack, and he's also pretty much invincible to simple types of damage, because his wound immediately heals and the blood vanishes immediately after getting attacked and stabbed through the chest by Bonnie. So presumably he's even more of a tank than Kaido is, because Kaido was taking 15 katanas to the chest at the beginning of the raid. You know, that left a mark on him. He didn't heal immediately. He's taken scars, but here we have Saturn just tanking a hit completely, and he's able to heal through it immediately. So clearly there's something weird here about their powers. I find it interesting how he speaks to the Marines in this instance, where he calls them insects, and he talks about we'll get to the human thing in a second, but he's referring to all the other Marines as insects and other people as insects, and it's like the philosophy of the world government has always dehumanized people, and it's clear as we've gotten to see more and more of the Gorosei and Imu that they don't look at people the way that we do. They look at them as like cattle, basically, expendable, disposable, worthless. And even here in front of his own soldiers, he's calling them insects. And I wonder, if there is a degree of not truth, but knowledge to be gained from this. The fact that he talks about humans in such a way, or regards humans in such a way, where it doesn't seem like he considers himself a part of that club. You know what I'm saying? He talks to humans as if they're insects, and then we get this point here, a little bit later, where, let's see, where is it? Why is it, he says it here, why is it that human beings feel the need to do what they are explicitly forbidden from doing? So, to me, the way he talks about it is like he's not part of the club. Like humans are a separate entity from himself, and that could be a result of the Gorosei believing themselves to be elites, believing themselves to be gods. But I think there's more to it than that. Because as we're going to see in the flashback, it's become apparent that the Gorosei do not age. Saturn does not age. We see him 47 years ago, or whatever, or however many years ago, 40 years ago, at God Valley. And we see him, and he looks the exact same as he does now. I had been saying this back since January, that the Gorosei I don't know what the true nature of them is. I didn't know at the time with the Imu video, but I already knew back then that they were going to be these sort of immortal characters, and it seems like that's coming to fruition here, because we're seeing them in different time periods unchanged completely. So the fact that he has this random power that is, in the camp of like mythical Zoan tier, the fact that he seems to heal his wounds immediately, he's pretty much immortal in terms of his aging. It's possible they're not human. It's possible that the Gorosei are not human, legitimately, and the Celestial Dragons are human, and they just think highly of themselves. They're being ruled by another group above them. The Gorosei rule over the Celestial Dragons pretty much. So to me, it's very much possible that what makes the Gorosei distinct is that they're actually not human. They could be in the realm of something closer to monsters or demons or ancient deities of some kind. I'd be willing to believe that they're some kind of deity from the old world, from the ancient world. Another thing that kind of makes me feel this way is the magic circle. And Actually, before I get to the magic circle, let's just talk about the religious stuff in One Piece, because I've talked about this time and time and time again. How there's all this symbolism in One Piece, biblical symbolism, stuff referencing the Bible, referencing gods and devils, referencing paradise, Adam and Eve, devil fruits, reference, the original sin, all those things, right? The book of Genesis is straight up in One Piece. Not the actual Bible book of Genesis, but they call it the book of Genesis. The book that describes how the celestial dragons even came to be, how the world came to be. They have this whole story talking about the 20 kings, the world nobles creating the world as we know it. That's the book of Genesis in the One Piece world. Kuma carries around the Bible with him. Kuma's a central focal character of this arc. We have devil fruits and the nature of devil fruits and how those powers even work coming up with Vegapunk. So Egghead, despite being ultra futuristic, is actually touching on some very, very traditional themes that are biblical in nature, and we're getting this expanded upon more and more because we have here one of the Gorosei straight up talking about how human beings are forbidden from doing something. Why are you doing it, right? This is the exact question that comes up in Adam and Eve when God tells Adam and Eve, hey, don't eat from that tree. You can enjoy, you have immortality, you're in paradise, you have the best life, whatever, you can enjoy yourselves here. Whatever you do, don't eat from that tree right over there, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And here we have one of the 5 paramount creators of the world questioning why is it that human beings feel the need to do what they're explicitly forbidden from doing. So there's a few things you can draw from this. There's a few things you can draw. Implication here is potentially that the origins of the world government aren't human in nature. There's something maybe demonic or monstrous going on behind the scenes. Thus the magic circle, right? We have the cross of the world government. The world government is represented by a big cross, but they worship essentially a devil, which you might think is weird, but actually has its basis in real life historical fact. If we look at the Templar Knights, the Knights Templar, they were an order that was supposed to be Christian in nature, and I'm pretty sure their symbol was the cross as well, but they were said to have worshipped Baphomet, a devil, a demon. So it's these Christian warriors that worshipped Baphomet. Correct me if I'm wrong. I know that it's a very gross oversimplification of it, but the idea is that there exists real world equivalents to that, where you have a government that puts up one religious front and then secretly worships a demon behind the scenes. So the possibility here is that the world government puts up this veneer, and then behind the scenes they're actually ruled from the top down by actual demons and monsters. When the magic circle appears, there's a straight up a pentagram in the circle. Now that obviously the pentagram's always been associated with magic, and when you go back through history, it's often thought that magic is the work of the devil, it's the work of demons. So in a lot of European countries, especially, if you were thought to be a user of magic or something like that, you would be thought to be a Satanist, and they would execute you, whatever. It was very, very taboo, and magic was viewed as a satanic thing. So they referred to that circle as a magic circle. We have devil fruits. We have all these weird magical powers that don't quite make sense. We have, in the time skip, Satanists straight up trying to summon Brook. As far as I'm concerned here, especially with the fact that mythical Zoans even exist in the first place, there has to be devils or demons of some kind in this story. I might be wrong, or maybe there's some equivalent, but I feel pretty strongly about that. And what that also implies to me is that maybe devil fruits are not. I originally thought devil fruits were a creation of Nika and the good guys, right? They were a technology or some sort of resource that were created by this hyper advanced civilization a long time ago. But now it's becoming apparent to me that, like, with all these reveals, that maybe devil fruit, like the devil fruit origins, lie in the villains of the story, and the reason the ocean counters devil fruits is actually the very same reason the world government, for example, hates the fishmen. The world being covered in water, and water being a direct counter to a power source the world government's relying on, if they utilize magic to create devil fruits, if magic is the way, like let's say we have the ancient kingdom and the 20 kings, right, that would become the world gov. The ancient kingdom might have been a kingdom of science, much like Egghead, and these 20 kings might have been practitioners of occult magical arts, and they used this occult magic to turn the tides on the ancient kingdom. That's something you can consider. Maybe that's where devil fruits come from, and what devil fruits might have been are people's souls getting trapped inside these fruits. The world government, Emu, these demons might be taking people's souls and trapping them. It's like a prison, which is where Nika comes from. Maybe he's stuck in the fruit because of that. And maybe the Eve tree, or the tree that's on top of the red line, that is, or presumably on top of the red line where Mary Joie is, may have been put there by the world government after they raised the land and took it from the Lunarians. It might have been their power source to use these devil fruits. And maybe it's Nika who turned the tides on them, the same way the poneglyphs got split up and sent all over the world. Maybe devil fruits got sent all over the world in the same fashion. Maybe their main plan to dominate the world could have been undone the same way that the poneglyphs got split up. So there's some interesting things you can draw from just these lines and the theming that's kind of surrounding Saturn here. And yeah, that's a good point, Tosmorn. Why do the devil fruits taste bad? It could be for that reason too. It could be for the reason that they are malicious in nature. They have malicious origins, and the good guys are using them for good purposes. But it might be that that there's something dark behind the reality of devil fruits, and it's not a good guy thing. It's actually a bad guy thing. It's the Gorosei are responsible for this. We see that everyone's being held down by some sort of gravity. They're trying to approach him, but they can't get near him because something's holding them down. And you see Vegapunk here says, if this is not science, then it must be devil fruit powers. Well, what if it's not a devil fruit power in the traditional sense? What if this is one of the original gods that you would think would be a devil fruit power? The same way Nika is in a devil fruit currently. There's just no devil fruit for this Gorosei here because he's the original one. He's the original creature, right? It could be that Saturn is the original. And he hasn't eaten a devil fruit. In fact, the devil fruit would be made out of him. Theoretically. So I think this is kind of a red herring, the devil fruit thing. I think that it's going to get revealed that he actually isn't a devil fruit user, which is that's what I'm getting from this. That's the way I feel it's going to go. So all this is really, really interesting. The fact that Kuma talks about Nika with such veneration, and we'll learn more about this in a couple pages, but this is really, really important because, as we're going to see, there's an entire race in One Piece that has been basically extinct for a while, and Kuma's the last remaining member. Sound familiar? Similar to the Lunarians, right? And back when the Lunarian thing happened, all I could think of was how this maybe explained Nika and who Nika was. I had pinned Nika as being a member of the Lunarian race, and now I'm starting to think that's not true. In fact, it makes more sense for him to be a buccaneer, if anything. Or maybe some sort of mix between the two. Because, number one, the size of the Straw Hat in Mary Joie is very large. And buccaneers are very large. And as we're going to learn more about the buccaneers and real-life buccaneers, the symbolism, the history behind them all greatly connects to pirates in One Piece, and the philosophy of Luffy to a degree, and Luffy's personality. You're going to find that very interesting. Just wait. So, take a little drink here. Kuma's born. He's born to a human mother and a buccaneer father. So he's half buccaneer. That might explain the fact that Kuma's head is rather normal sized and the rest of his body is very large, as opposed to how you see his father has a very large head. Kuma has a small head, and it's true, and it might be because he's half human, so that's something to consider. Once again, another implication just by the genetics of his parents that you might be able to get. They don't tell it to you outright. Oda doesn't say it outright, but I have a feeling that's the explanation. So, very, very sad. The Buccaneers are being hunted just like the D-Clan, pretty much. Honestly, worse, because we don't see D-Clan members getting snuffed out of existence just for being a D-Clan member. You know, they've been kind of allowed to go about doing their thing, but I don't know. I mean, there's also, like, you know, the whole thing where Law's dad told him to keep it a secret. Like, yeah, you have the D, but don't tell people. So it might be a similar situation. Maybe if it's common knowledge that someone has a D, the government will come for you and hunt you down, turn you into a slave or whatever. But, you know, I don't entirely know about that, because we have a D member in the Marines, and when they find a Buccaneer, instead of turning him into a Marine, let's say, they just turn him right into a slave. Straight to slavery. So, I don't know, man. Like, do the D-Clan have it as bad as the Buccaneers? They're not extinct. But the way we've always heard about it in the story is that the D-Clan is the enemy of the gods. They hate, the world government's so afraid and worried about the D-Clan. They hate them. So why is it that there seems to be so many D members out and about? They haven't gone extinct, and there's one working for them. There's one in the world government. At least. We don't even know. There might be more. There used to be 2 with Saul. So, might have been 3 with Dragon. So the way I see it is like, you know, they didn't hide that. They didn't hide the nature of their name. So, Buccaneers really have it bad. There's something that the Buccaneers did, or 800 years ago that the Buccaneers did, that's really, really bad. Like, really taboo. So, what can we learn from this? Well, I'm going to get into Buccaneers in a second. But I want to talk about the One Piece. So there's real life Buccaneers and there's One Piece Buccaneers. Before we get to the real life Buccaneers, let's talk about One Piece, okay? It's kind of implied at the end of this chapter that, and I'll pull up this page here. Ivankov talks about how Kuma has giant's blood. You have the blood of giants in you. And we see how they're very large, very powerful. So is it possible that Buccaneers are half human, half giant? Is that what it is? Is that the racial distinction there? It's like there's giants, there's humans, and then the middle stage is Buccaneers. If one of your parents is a giant, you're a Buccaneer. Maybe. That might be it. There's a lot of tribes of giants, by the way it looks. Elbaf has its own giants. There's giants from outside of Elbaf. There's the Yeti Cool Brothers, which seem to be a completely different species of giant. And now we have also we have the half giant, half fishman. I don't know if why am I forgetting the name? What is the name of those? Half giant, half fishman. Help me out. I don't know why I'm blanking on that. But the point is, there's a lot of different types of giant out there. And there's ancient giants. So now we have Buccaneers, which are half giant, half human, presumably. And we have an extra little detail that is heavily implied by the existence of this race and the nature of its existence in the form of, ready? Big Mom. And I know what you're thinking. You think I'm going to say that Big... I don't mean to, like, be an aggressive pointer here, but, like, I know the first instinct when you hear me say Big Mom is, oh, you think Big Mom's a Buccaneer, right? That explains her absurd strength. I actually don't think Big Mom's a Buccaneer, because her parents both, as far as I remember, they both seem to be human. So it wouldn't make sense for 2 humans to give birth to a Buccaneer. So I don't think Big Mom's a Buccaneer. And if she was a Buccaneer, that would render the next point I'm about to make, and that she made in the story, moot, which is, Big Mom is missing Buccaneers in Totland. There were 3 races, Big Mom said, that she was missing in her collection. She's missing giants, obviously, because the giants hate her. She's missing, we ended up learning, Lunarians. And then there was a 3rd unnamed race that she was missing that we never got clarification on until now. It's obvious that the 3rd race are Buccaneers. Buccaneers are the race Big Mom is missing. So why is this really cool? Why does this make so much sense? Well, why don't we think about what Big Mom was trying to do when we went to Whole Cake Island and when we heard the backstory and we heard about Elbaf. What was Big Mom trying to do, guys? Big Mom was trying to marry her daughter Lola to a giant Loki. Okay? So she wanted to have her daughter, a human, marry a giant. And what would they have produced? They would have produced a Buccaneer for Big Mom's collection. You understand? Big Mom would have had her Buccaneer through Lola and Loki. That's why she wanted that marriage to happen. And when that hit me reading this chapter, it's like, it seems like a small thing, but man, it's like, it makes so much sense. It makes so much sense when you think about it. So, you know, the Buccaneers are, there's a lot going on with this race. They existed at one point. They no longer exist. They were hunted down, and they had supposedly committed some great taboo against the world government. Let me see where it was said here. Is it Saturn who says it? You're talking about Kuma. He was born a slave, a descendant of people who committed a grave sin against the world, a survivor of the now extinct Buccaneer race. So, the Buccaneers committed some grave sin. What is this grave sin they committed? Well, I can't imagine it's very different from what the D-Clan did or what Lily did. That was a grave sin. I can't imagine it's any different from what O'Hara did in the modern age. So clearly they did something that was against the world government's objectives, against their narrative. What do I think that is? I think they teamed up with Joy Boy. I think, or to some degree, if Joy Boy was a member of the Buccaneer race, the Buccaneer race stood behind him. They stood behind Nika. And we see in this chapter the constant talk about Nika. Sun God Nika's gonna come and save you. There's a big thing in Buccaneer folklore about this guy, Sun God Nika. The name has been passed down through Buccaneer folklore for generations. Nika will come and take you out to the sea where you will be under the sun and free. Nika always smiles, blah, blah, blah. By the way, Clap getting shot here in front of Kuma, that was brutal. That really killed me. This is one of the most awful things I've seen. Really dark. Anyway, point is, it seems like Nika's story is Buccaneer in origin. So, the idea to me that he was a large guy, had a very large straw hat, makes sense, fits into this race. If Nika is like the guy that the world government hates, he's like the one that they hate. If that's the case, then all of his descendants, all of his people would be lumped in with that grave sin, right? We saw what they did to O'Hara. A few scholars that broke the rules resulted in the whole island burning down. So, if Nika is part of their folklore, if he's part of their religion, he's part of their culture, then wouldn't it make sense that the reason that the Buccaneers were hunted down is because they're straight up related to Nika, and they're capable of, to some degree, what Nika was capable of? Maybe. That's something to consider. And I've always thought it was Lunarian in origin up until now, which would have explained them getting wiped out. But now it seems no. Maybe the reason the Lunarians were hunted down was because they wanted their home. They wanted their homeland. They wanted to replace the gods. This might be a completely different motive. This might be Nika stood up to us. He stood against us. We have to wipe out his people in response so this never happens again. Right? So, as far as I'm concerned right now, Nika has to be at least part Buccaneer in some way. Let's talk about real Buccaneers and why this name is important for this race. Okay, because out of all the names you could have picked half giants, you could have picked demi giants, you could have picked whatever. The name Buccaneers is a very interesting choice because we have the whole element of pirates being the mortal enemy of the world government, basically. The age of piracy, they want to end pirates. Pirates are a whole big deal for them. And Buccaneers are proto-pirates in the real world. They were pirates. I mean, there's been pirates before Buccaneers, but when you think about the golden age of piracy in the real world, Pirates of the Caribbean style, Blackbeard, Captain Kidd. You have all these, these big names, these cutthroat pirates and killers flying black flags, sailing on the Caribbean Sea, stealing treasure from galleons, going on islands, that sort of thing. When you think about that, buccaneers came slightly before that era, and they were kind of like the proto Golden Age pirates, and I'll explain the whole deal with that. But why that's important here is because we have Nika and his will being carried forward through the generations through piracy, through the Great Age of Piracy, all stemming back to the Ancient Kingdom 800 years ago or whatever. If the Buccaneers come from that same time period, then it could have been that the Buccaneers and Nika were the original pirates in One Piece. They were the original guys that basically started this trend of piracy. So not only is it a grave sin to follow Joy Boy or to turn against the world government, but in this case, their grave sin could have been that they're the ones who started piracy. They started in the One Piece world. The Buccaneer race started the act of piracy. We see with the giant warrior pirates, we see how giants are like a race that loves warfare. They're always, it's a big cultural thing to go out there and fight and engage in combat and seek adventure and do all those things. They almost seem like a very traditional, almost ancient style of pirate. And if we look at like Nordic history and we were reading Vinland Saga on the stream a while ago. They're like OG pirates. Well before the Great Age of Piracy, we had Vikings plundering all of the European coast, especially the northern coast, because they were pirates. They'd get in their boats, they'd raid land, and they'd go take whatever they found. They'd pillage and do all that stuff. So in a way, Vikings are like the OG of the OG pirates, and now we have half giant, half humans. So the giants are inspired by the Vikings, and we have this half form. And now we no longer have Viking pirates, but we have real traditional, stereotypical Golden Age style pirates in the form of the Buccaneers. And these are the guys that started what we think of today in One Piece as piracy. Roger, Luffy, all those style of pirates came from these guys, in my opinion. So let's talk about the real Buccaneers now. Why this all makes sense, why this all comes together almost perfectly, in my opinion. I'm a nice chewer. Deal with it. So, Buccaneers are proto-pirates. Oftentimes people conflate Buccaneer and pirate as if they're the same thing. They are not the same thing. They're slightly different. There's some important distinctions we need to talk about here. So Buccaneers, also known as Buccaneers, and also known as Brethren of the Coast, which we'll get to, they were viewed differently in their time. This was in the 17th century, so, the 1600s. These were guys that, it wasn't the Golden Age of piracy. They weren't known as villains. They weren't known as cutthroats. Obviously, they were very dangerous men. They were hardened men, but they weren't viewed the way that we view pirates today, as these ruthless, awful, cruel pillagers. In fact, Buccaneers, before the Golden Age of piracy, Buccaneers were viewed as almost heroes. They were viewed positively by people. Why were they viewed positively? Well, they were actually responsible for the defense of many islands in the Caribbean. And they defended Tortuga from Spanish invasion. They defended Jamaica. They actually fortified these islands and defended them from outside invaders. And they were viewed, on behalf of the people there, they were viewed as heroes. Buccaneers were viewed actually very positively. They were often men, soldiers for hire, that would be hired by governments, but that would be hired by people to do the fighting, to do the protecting. And oftentimes they were happy to do it. They made that quick buck. They were warriors. They were fighters. They were viewed as rough and tough men of the sea. But it was in a good, noble way. People, for the most part, liked Buccaneers. Obviously, there were some bad ones out there. For example, Francois Lolonois, or however you pronounce that fucking Rubik's Cube of a name, is the inspiration behind Roronoa Zoro. He was a Buccaneer. He was pretty cruel. He was notoriously cruel. So, get that, we'll put that to the side there. But generally, Buccaneers were viewed positively, at least for a time. So who were the Buccaneers? Well, actually, Buccaneers were originally French hunters who operated in Tortuga and Hispaniola in the Caribbean. and they were named for the Caribbean word, I think it's buccan or bucan. I don't know how to pronounce it. What is a buccan? It's a wooden frame that buccaneers were famous for using. It's a wooden frame, and they would use this wooden frame for what? Smoking meat. For a time, before buccaneers took to the sea, they were just hunters that operated on these islands, and all they would do all day is hunt. They would kill wild animals like boars and feral cows, and they would cook them, and they would smoke them. They would make smoked meat, and their name buccaneers comes from the practice of how they would smoke their meat and make jerky. And they would take this jerky and they would sell it to the armies of the local armies that would be, sailing by. They would sell it to, the people in those territories. So it's funny to me that the people that might be directly connected to like Nika and Luffy and One Piece and all this stuff, their whole MO is just cooking and eating meat. That's where the name Buccaneer even comes from. And like Luffy exclusively eats meat. But we'll talk about that too. Another thing about the Buccaneers also ate meat exclusively. Like their diet was made up almost entirely of meat. Okay? So very interesting there. The problem is, this is where the problem came in with the Buccaneers. They would cook, they would smoke this meat, they'd sell it, they'd make a profit, and they lived as being hunters in the Caribbean islands. But what happened was, unfortunately for them, the 17th century, that time period was one of extreme religious persecution and strife. Wherever you were in Europe or in the New World, there was a lot of religious strife there. If you were not following the proper religion of your area, there's a good chance you would die, and die horribly. A great example to cite from the 17th century of this is the Salem witch trials. If you want to talk about religious fanaticism and crazy, profound amounts of death in any time period of European history, the 17th century is probably one of the bloodiest times in European history. I watched a video that said something along the lines of, I think Germany had a population of 20 million during that time, and 8 million people died during the course of the 30 Years' War. Like, that's an insane time period. Anywhere in Europe, Spain, heavily ruled by the Catholic Church. If you were not Catholic, you were persecuted. Why is this all extremely important? Well, Hispaniola was an area that was largely run by the Spanish, and these guys were French hunters in Hispaniola. And what's the issue here? Well, unfortunately for them, Buccaneers were by and large Protestant. They were not Catholic, they were Protestant. So what that meant was that the Spanish army decided, well, these guys are heathens. They're not Catholic, they're not part of the Catholic Church. We have to kill them, and we have to hunt them down, and we have to drive them out of our territory. So the Spanish fleet began to come over and kill and hunt buccaneers and drive them out of the territory, kill the animals they were hunting. They basically tried to do what the world government did to buccaneers in One Piece. They tried to extinct that, like they tried to make them extinct. They tried to wipe them out. And what this did to the Buccaneers, this was a problem for them, obviously, right? Because these are a bunch of guys. They're living freely. By the way, that's another thing. Buccaneers lived under no legal jurisdiction. They didn't follow any laws, but they weren't like unlawful. They had their own code, but they lived very freely. They weren't subject to any government. They just kind of wheeled and dealed. They kind of just went around the ocean doing whatever, taking whatever odd jobs. So, now the law's coming down, this government's trying to persecute them for their religion and wipe them out. And what are the Buccaneers forced to do in this situation? What do they got to do now, right? They're being killed, they're being hunted down by the Spanish. Well, they would ultimately team up with French pirates. There were other French pirates that are known as filibusters. At this time, they were called filibusters. And these French pirates teamed up with the Buccaneers because they were like, hey, we're French, you're French, the Spanish are fucking us right now, we have nowhere to go, we're without a home. So what happens? The Buccaneers team up with pirates, and they together, they fight back at the Spanish. They start fighting back. And in fact, this alliance was so effective that it would take only a handful of men, like a group of 20 or so men, and they could raid an entire treasure galleon of the Spanish. These guys were so good at their job. The buccaneers were so effective at doing this. They were tearing through the Spanish fleets. So this caused a big problem for them. And eventually, the Buccaneers and the filibusters ended up forming this big group, this big coalition, a really massive group, by the way. And it was called the Brethren of the Coast. Now, the Brethren of the Coast eventually was not just French guys. As time went on, these buccaneers started to pick up more and more men from all over the world. In fact, the Brethren of the Coast was ultimately made up of people from all nations of the planet. I'm not kidding. Like, you could think of almost any country in Europe at the time, or any of the local populations, and there was someone from those countries in the Brethren of the Coast, in the Buccaneers that were buccaneers. These large groups of buccaneers were made up of people of all different types from all over the planet. And what's even cooler is that they were also made up of many different occupations. It wasn't just cutthroats and killers. It was people like farmers. It was artisans. There were sailors. There were intellectuals among their crews. In fact, there were even escaped slaves, which is another massive tie-in into what we have here. So how does this connect to One Piece? We see with the One Piece pirate crews that they're made up of people from all different walks of life, all different islands from all over the world, different skill sets. We have an archaeologist here. We have a doctor here. We have a musician here. These were the foundational elements of piracy in the Golden Age that started with these guys. And it's the Buccaneers that basically defied all borders, defied all legal boundaries, defied all nations. It was just them, this group of like dudes in the Caribbean from all different walks of life doing their own thing and fighting back against the various kingdoms in Europe. Interesting details about the Buccaneers is that they elected their captains democratically, which is pretty interesting. They put things to a vote. Pretty much anything that had to be decided, they put to a vote. Unlike pirates of the later times where, yeah, sometimes pirates are elected democratically, but not really. Pirates weren't exactly a democratic unit. Buccaneers were much more free-spirited in that nature and willing to kind of do organized. Not everyone was looking to kill each other. They kind of wanted to work together. And what was interesting about that, I heard a quote that the Buccaneers were not, the reason that they put their leadership to a vote was not because they were not because they were truly democratic, they believed in democracy, but because all of them equally viewed themselves as a leader, so no one could decide on who to lead the show. So they had to vote because no one, like everyone was like, I could be leader, I believe in myself, we could all do it. So they kind of had to just settle it with a vote, oftentimes. What's really cool also is that Buccaneers developed written contracts that formed the earliest versions of the pirate code that we would see in the Golden Age. So all the Golden Age things, right? All the typical things we imagine that pirates do, the pirate code that they follow, the kind of unwritten code they follow on these ships. Buccaneers actually started that. They had written contracts where they kind of wrote down the code, the rules, where our territory was, where we would sail, and you signed the contract, you got on board the ship, you did your job, and that was the end of the story. Okay, as a matter of fact, if you wanted to leave the crew at any point, you were free to do so. There was no penalty. But obviously later, once we get to the Golden Age of pirates, leaving a crew is a big taboo thing. But in the Age of Buccaneers, you could do whatever you want. If you didn't want to be part of the crew, you couldn't. You were free to go, free to do what you want. If you want to be with us, you can. If you want to go fight, you can. If you don't, you don't. That's how it was. It was very like laissez-faire. So I thought that was really really interesting. Here's another really cool little fact I found that I think you guys are really going to appreciate about the Buccaneers. Ready? So, because the era of Buccaneers happened before the sugar trade took off in Jamaica, because Jamaica is where a lot of the sugar trade like exploded from. Captain Morgan became like the governor or whatever of Jamaica, and then after that, the sugar trade started to just boom from there. That was during like the golden age of piracy. Captain Morgan, I'm pretty sure, was a buccaneer himself before he settled down and became governor. the sugar trade exploded, and because of the sugar trade exploding during the 1800s, that's why pirates drink rum, right? The big reason that pirates are known for drinking rum is because of the sugar trade. Jamaica was a local island in the Caribbean, so sugar was in excess. Alcohol made from sugar was obviously in excess too. Thus, rum was the drink of choice. Rum was the most common drink, or one of the most common drinks for pirates to have at the time. So, the thing is though, when buccaneers were a thing, the sugar trade was not at its height. So pirates or buccaneers did not drink rum. So what did they drink? What did they drink, you might be asking? Well, they drank wine. Wine, as in the same type of thing that we have pirates in One Piece drinking. One Piece pirates don't share cups of rum, they share cups of rice wine. They share cups of wine with each other. Very weird to think about, right? Because we've been reading a manga about pirates for 1,095 chapters, and there's nary a mention of rum anywhere in the manga, and every time we see pirates drinking, it's always wine, it's not rum. So, the fact that buccaneers were known for drinking wine rather than rum, I think is another really interesting detail. They lived off meat exclusively. Their diet was almost all meat and wine. And as a matter of fact, because the Buccaneers were viewed positively, some Buccaneers were actually liked so much by some of the kings in Europe. There's a couple that I'm pretty sure that were knighted. They were actually received a knight status from, I think, one of the King of England or some other country. So yeah, another really interesting fact about Buccaneers is that they were the first privateers. So the Shichibukai, the Seven Warlords, are One Piece's version of privateers. Well, privateering actually started with Buccaneers. Buccaneers are the ones that started the whole thing with privateering. So for those who don't know, privateering is, during this time period, governments didn't want to use their own armies to do shit, right? We had all these big crews of pirates and sailors that were very effective on the sea. They were very good soldiers, very good in naval warfare. So what did they do? So all these governments of Europe would give these notes. They were called letters of marque, I think. There were these notes that they would give to these pirate crews and be like, look, you're pirates. We're fine with that. You're allowed to be pirates. As a matter of fact, we're going to pay you to go pillage our enemies' ships and villages. We want you to go rob our enemies. So at the time, for example, England and Spain hated each other, so the English would pay buccaneers. They would actually hire them to go fight the Spanish. So that's what privateering is, and the first people to ever do privateering were the buccaneers. It started with them. So what were buccaneers? Were they pirates? Were they privateers? As a matter of fact, they were neither. They were pretty much both and neither at the same time, which also lends itself to the One Piece Buccaneers, because if what I'm saying is true, if Joy Boy maybe was part of this race, if they allied with the Joy Boy pirates or whatever, it could be that Buccaneers and Joy Boy and his crew are the progenitors of piracy in One Piece. All pirates in One Piece, all the warlords, the whole system of piracy and the whole way it works comes back to the Buccaneers. And if we look in the real world, real life Golden Age piracy all traces back to the Buccaneers. The same deal. So I think that's really, really interesting, and it points to a very important, there's a lot of weight on just the name of this race alone. We have only heard of Buccaneers as of this chapter. We've gotten maybe 2 or 3 lines referencing Buccaneers explicitly. And there's so much that you can take from it, just from the name, just from the characters it's attached to, just from the way that characters like Big Mom have wanted to do, they've wanted to create their own, just the way that they've committed some grave taboo against the world government. It's all there in the pages, it's just not explicitly said, which once again takes us back to our word of the day, implications. Oda choosing that name, Oda choosing to give it to Kuma, this tribe to Kuma, Oda choosing to say what he has said so far. It's all implying very heavy things in the background, it's just not being given to us outright. So that's the Buccaneer stuff. I find that to be really cool. I think it's one of the best introductions of a race in One Piece, because you can take stuff from, like, let's say you hear about Lunarians, you know, you hear about the Fishmen, you hear about all these different types of races and tribes in One Piece, and they're almost kind of like surface level, like, yeah, the Fishmen are they're fish that are people, basically. Oh, the Giants are just giant people. Oh, the Tontada are just small people with tails. You know, like, there's on the surface, you don't really get too much more beyond their names and their personalities and where their place is in the world. But because we have this race here, the Buccaneers, that no longer exists, and the fact that they have all this immense strength, they're said to have giant's blood, they have a name that's directly connected to real life pirate terminology. You can't help but ask all these questions, like, why are they named that? What taboo did they, like, what rule did they break? Why were they hunted to extinction? Why are they so strong? How do they have giant's blood? What's the deal with that? All of that stuff branches out just from this one little introduction, and we went over it today. I'm sure I could continue to go on for another 20 minutes about this shit. It's really, really fucking cool. So we move on to the next part of the chapter. We have Saint Fagarland Garling. Now, I think it's becoming increasingly evident to everyone that this guy has some blood relation maybe to Shanks, because they do have some similar appearances in the facial region here. But I'm also not entirely convinced of this yet, because it doesn't make total sense to me. It doesn't make total sense to me that he would be Shanks' father, considering the occasion that he's at God Valley for. We know what God Valley is now. We have this whole game that's being played on God Valley. Why would Garling's baby be here? But before we get to that, let's talk about the games, right? So we have this native cleansing festival that the world government does apparently every few years, or every once in a while. The official translation changed the interpretation of that line a little bit. They said, we're sorry, you know, after a long wait of 3 years, which to me implies you've waited 3 long years. Yeah, that kind of to me implies maybe it doesn't happen every 3 years, and that this is an oddity, maybe that they don't do it on a routine, but it just happens every once in a while, which means that this might happen more often than every 3 years. It might happen once every year, potentially, depending on the circumstances. So that's a terrifying thought to think about. Another terrifying thought to think about is that the reason for this. Why are they doing this manhunt? Why are they killing all these people at God Valley? 2 reasons. This place, God Valley, this place, which has the audacity to name itself the Valley of God, possesses ample natural resources. So once again, tying back to the religious persecution thing, the celestial dragons and the world government believe themselves to be the gods of the world. This island has a blasphemous name because it's an unaffiliated island, it's not affiliated with the world government and the supposed true gods, but they have the name God Valley. So it could be that this is an example of them trying to enforce their cult, their religion upon the world. Hey, we're the real gods. You can't to be such a blasphemous nation like this. We're gonna show you what happens. We're gonna subject you and your people to a manhunt. Which is awful. It's really terrible. And what's even more incredibly awful and scary about this is Garling kills the king before the game starts, and they deduct points from Garling, and they deduct 10,000 points. And it's supposed to, according to him, he calls it a handicap. 10,000 points. I need to know how much one person is worth. Because if one slave or one civilian is worth 1 point, you're telling me that Garling has 10,000 points to make up for now? This guy's about to kill thousands of people on page, if that's the case. That's awful. That is a bit, we're talking genocide here. We're talking and that's what this is. It's a genocide turned into a game, which is also incredibly cruel. But the fact that the choice of the number 10,000, 10,000 points, I'm shocked they didn't in this chapter say one person is worth 1 point or whatever, one person's worth 5 points. I need to know how much the average target is worth. 10,000 points is crazy. That's supposed to be his handicap? How many people are on this island? How many people are about to die? You know, this is It's some terrible stuff. Another thing, yes, good point, Tasmorn. I was going to talk about this too. The fact that it's the native hunting competition, right? The use of the word native. These are natives to God Valley. Doesn't this sound a lot like the conquistadors of Europe? The people from the kingdoms of Europe who would get to the New World in the age of piracy, in this age, the 17th, 16th, the 16, 17, 1800s. These European countries would come to the New World and absolutely massacre the native populations. The conquistadors were infamous for that. Pizarro, like the namesake of Pizarro in One Piece. Oda clearly knows about this. He's referenced it more than once. There's multiple characters named after these very conquistadors, people like Cortez. They went to the New World and they absolutely decimated the native populations there. That's exactly what the world government is doing here. Another crazy implication to come of this is, ready for this one? This one blew my mind thinking about it. In my opinion, this, to me, confirms that Elbaf has the third ancient weapon. This is confirmation to me. Why? They are hosting this game at God Valley because it's an unaffiliated nation. What are some other unaffiliated nations we can think of in One Piece? Well, we have Wano, which has supposedly Pluton. We have the Fishmen. They're an affiliated nation, I guess, in the sense that they're allowed to attend Reverie and stuff, but we all know how the Fishmen are treated by the world government. They're enslaved. Technically it's Luffy's territory now. It's not even a world government's country. It's not truly a world government nation. Poseidon is on Fishman Island. Wano has Pluton. Why is it that these native hunting competitions have not happened there? Maybe it's because the world government is afraid of the ancient weapons being used against them if they were to invade these islands. It could also be because they're strong. The land of samurai is not a place you can go hunting, And to me, it's like, well, what's another island that's unaffiliated with the world government? Elbaf. Elbaf is not affiliated with the world government. They have not done a native hunting game on Elbaf so far. So it could be for multiple reasons. It would be too difficult to do so. The giants there are too much of a threat. In my opinion, for me, it feels like all the nations that haven't had direct ties to the world government, that have been unaffiliated, that have remained for these 800 years, that haven't been persecuted, so far seem to be in possession of ancient weapons. So the third one on my mental list here is Elbaf. And that's the big question. It's like, what's the deal with Elbaf? Like, why have they not touched it? Why is Elbaf, able to preserve basically so much from the ancient world? I think that could be it. I think this is the implication here is that, if you're just an average nation that's unaffiliated, you're going to be hunted down and destroyed. But if you're a nation with some powerful weapon within your borders that the world government is deeply, deeply afraid of, which is part of the reason they want to hide the poneglyphs, if that's the reason, maybe they don't invade, maybe they don't hold a manhunt on these particular 3 islands because of the ancient weapons. So yeah, there's a bunch that comes from that. Finally, wrapping up the chapter, we get to the end here. This is not even related to anything we've been talking about so far, pretty much. What's the deal with this character, Jenny? Actually, hold on. Before I get to that, I forgot. There's one thing I wanted to talk about. So, we mentioned earlier in the stream, the chests, right? Could it be that the chests contain rewards of devil fruits for the winners of this competition? Right? Each chest, they look like chests like the chest that Luffy ate from. There might be devil fruits inside. We have Kuma, we have Ivankov, and we have Jenny here. And it could be that all 3 of them get their devil fruit powers from these chests during the God Valley incident, right? That's a pretty cool immediate assumption. I think that's a pretty likely scenario. I'm going to present to you a scenario B. What if inside each of these chests are babies? Why do I say that? Well, at the end of Film Red, we get this one scene at God Valley. It's confirmed in the Film Red volume 4000 or whatever, that Roger and Rayleigh found Shanks inside of a chest at God Valley. Well, we're at God Valley, and we have 6 chests here. And Shanks is found in one of these chests, presumably. Could it be that they have babies in those chests? I don't know what the reason is for why they would have babies in there. But it could be. I don't even know. Is it like you're betting your own children? Did Garling bet his own kid? Like, if Shanks is Garling's son, did the Celestial Dragons, did the members of this competition, did these God Knights put their children up for prizes? For, like, I don't understand what the... All I'm saying is, we know Shanks was found in a chest. This is a fact. This is a fact. We know Shanks was in a chest at God Valley, and he was found there. I don't know. I'm just saying. The alternative is maybe someone put him in a chest, like in all the violence, in the destruction, in the middle of the battle. The devil fruits got eaten and there's a bunch of empty chests, and to save the baby, they put Shanks in the chest. That probably makes more sense. But I'm just saying, when we have the evil organization that is the world government, they're so fucking evil. They're so evil. To me, to have them have like literal children as like rewards for a blood sport is so OD to me, and I would be ready for that to be the case. I'm ready for that to happen. If so, I'm just saying. So just want to talk about that treasure chest situation. I'm very suspicious about how these chests are probably going to play heavily into Shanks's backstory. And we end the chapter with Ivankov and Ginny here. Now, who's Ginny? Big question. Who's Ginny? Guys, Ginny is Bonnie. The original Bonnie. It's not Bonnie's mom. It's not Kuma's wife. As a matter of fact, I don't think Bonnie's blood related to Kuma. I don't think Bonnie is Kuma's actual child. You ready for this? Bonnie doesn't have any indication that she's a Buccaneer, as far as I can tell. I don't think she's a Buccaneer. I think Bonnie is fully human. I don't think she has Kuma's blood in her. I think, in fact, Bonnie is a clone of Ginny. And I think that everyone was saying, right? Everyone was saying, the clone theories, they're all over the place. Everyone's a clone or no one's a clone. It's hard to decide. You know, we opened a Pandora's box with the cloning thing. Think about this. We have an arc that introduces, through Stussy, the idea of cloning a character. Okay? Why would Oda introduce the clone idea if he wasn't going to bring it back with another character? As a matter of fact, why wouldn't he bring it back with another character in the very arc that's introduced in? In my opinion, Stussy is the setup introducing us to the concept of cloning, so that when this happens, when the reveal for this happens, we are prepped for it. We are primed to be ready to accept Bonnie as a clone. So here's the details that all come together. Well, we have the Gorosei, we have various people refer to Bonnie as a child, but obviously Oda doesn't seem to subscribe to that belief because he continues to draw Bonnie in weird poses. Aside from that, it's weird because, you know, Kuma was a scientist a while ago. He wasn't a scientist within the last handful of years. He was a warlord for the last handful of years. But we see a flashback with Bonnie and Kuma where Bonnie's a baby and Kuma's holding her up. And that could not have been within the span of years that would make Bonnie a child. That had to have happened a while ago. So the way I see it is one of two scenarios here. Either Bonnie is rapidly aging because she's a clone, or she was cloned a while ago and she's referred to as a child because she's, you know, let's say they consider her a child because she was recently made or whatever. But this is the way I'm seeing it here. The reason Ginny has to be a clone in my mind is, number one, because of the eating thing. Like, it's clear she shares visual similarities. I wouldn't be surprised if she had pink hair. She has visual similarities with Bonnie. Personality is similar to Bonnie. clearly going to develop some kind of relationship with Kuma and Ivankov, and by extension the other revolutionaries. We have cloning introduced as a concept earlier in the arc, and here is the linchpin that puts it all together. What the fuck is it that Vegapunk doesn't want Bonnie to see, right? So remember when Bonnie was going through the island and going through Egghead, and she found the room with the bubble, with Kuma's bubble, okay? What was in that bubble? Vegapunk was trying to get Bonnie not to go in that room. He was like, don't go in there. Don't do it. He didn't want her to see the bubble. Kuma asked Vegapunk to make sure she doesn't see the bubble. What do they not want Bonnie to see? They don't want Bonnie to see that she's a clone of someone else, that she's not actually Kuma's daughter. Kuma was probably friends with Jinny, maybe even closer, but maybe Jinny tragically died, and thus they used Jinny to, they cloned Jinny, Kuma and Vegapunk, they cloned her, and then we get Bonnie. But the thing is, Kuma doesn't want to raise a child telling them, you're a clone of someone who tragically died. You're a clone, you know? You don't have any parents in this world, you're just a clone, you were made in the lab. Kuma doesn't want to tell that to Bonnie, so what does Kuma tell Bonnie? I'm your father. He raises Bonnie as if she's his own child. And Bonnie grows up thinking that she is Kuma's daughter, right? So what Kuma doesn't want Bonnie to see is the true past, Kuma's true past, where we see Kuma's childhood, we meet Jinny, and then we see the order of events that lead up to Kuma becoming a scientist, Kuma cloning Jinny, and creating Bonnie, because Kuma obviously wanted to raise her as if she was his own daughter. She doesn't want the illusion, he doesn't want the illusion to be lifted where, you know, Bonnie feels like she has no one in this world, that she's alone, she has no parents, she's not important. No, Kuma wants to be her father. He wants to always be her father. He doesn't want... It's almost like a Bellemere thing, where Bellemere was like, you know, we're not related by blood, but you're my daughters. You're my family. And she died for that. And the way I see it is Kuma is doing the same thing. Kuma raised Bonnie as his daughter and wants her to feel like and you know, think of herself as his daughter. So he's trying to hide the truth about who she really is from her. So in my opinion, the big setup here is going to, the big twist is going to be that this is actually Bonnie. This is Bonnie 1.0. And when Bonnie stuck her hands into Kuma's bubble in that room and we saw Kuma as a slave at Marie-Joie, and then Bonnie was crying, Bonnie saw this flashback. Everything we're seeing right now, Bonnie already saw it. So I have a very strong feeling that she's going to learn the truth. She learned the truth about herself, and that makes this part of the chapter that much more powerful. Where Bonnie stabs Saturn and says, "You killed my father." If this is true, if Bonnie saw this flashback and it turns out that she was a clone of Jinny, and she's still calling Kuma her father, if she knows the truth and she still regards herself as his daughter, is still calling him her father, that is very, very powerful. That is very powerful because she's ignored. She doesn't care. Kuma was hiding it from her, and even after she learned the truth, she loved him so much that she doesn't care. No, he's still my father. You killed my father. And that's how it's going to be. I think that's what the twist is going to be. Bonnie is a clone of Jinny. So, yeah, and it makes so much sense. I would rather the clone plotline come to an end in this arc. I don't want every other character in this story to be a clone of someone. So who do we make a clone? Well, we have Stussy that's a clone. Who else is tied to Egghead? What other characters have close ties to Vegapunk and Egghead? Well, Kuma. Well, he has been cloned. We have the Pacifistas. We have a million Kumas. Okay, who else do we have cloned? Well, no one else that I can think of. I guess Vegapunk made 6 versions of himself. There's this clone thing that keeps coming up over and over again in the arc. People getting recreated and turned into different forms, multiple versions of the same person. So why wouldn't it make sense for Bonnie, who's Kuma's daughter, who's, you know, friends with Vegapunk, who's deeply connected to this arc? This is her arc. Wouldn't it make sense for Bonnie to also play into the clone plotline here? And, you know, if Jinny is not a character in the story currently, that implies a lot about Jinny. That means that Jinny's dead probably, or Jinny's not Jinny anymore. So something happened to this character, and now we're meeting this character we've never seen. So it's like, yeah, something's got to happen to Ginny before this flashback is over, and I think it's going to tie directly into who Bonnie is. So, yeah. And that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it, guys. We're at the end of the chapter. We got a break next week. I know that this is a little bit different from the usual fare. This is not a reaction, but this is my full breakdown of chapter 1095. All the theories, all the thoughts I got coming off of this chapter. I actually have a couple more thoughts I'm not going to share with you guys because I'd like to save them for a theory video, and I would like to keep those a surprise, keep them up the sleeve. But for now, that's pretty much what I got. That's pretty much what I got coming from this chapter. There's so much in here, and yeah, I'm so excited for the next one, because if we got the rest of the God Valley flashback coming up, I mean, we are in for some absolute craziness. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much all I got to say about 1095. What do you guys think? I know I've been not looking at the chat too much. I wanted to get through this full explanation, this full breakdown. Let me start catching up on super chats and stuff. So let me just do that real quick. Fan funding. All right, let's see all the super chats. Bailey Boy Bailey, welcome. Boily Boy Bailey, welcome to the crew, my friend. K Maya, welcome to the crew as well. Dexter, thank you for the 20. I really love your sweater, man. Hope you're well. Appreciate that, bro. I love the sweater. If you guys are interested in getting something like this, check out Steady Hands. Look up Steady Hands. They make all these cardigans, anime-themed cardigans. They only make them. There's like a week that happens every couple of months or whatever called Cardi Week, and that's when the shop opens up and you can place your order. I got a bunch of stuff like this. I have a Zorro cardigan too. It's really good. But I love these. Super comfortable, well made, soft, and perfect for my my nerdiness. So Mr. Rubix, thank you for the member message, my friend. Said, I can see why Shanks would be there. Garling or his wife or family could bring him to see his father's glory. Think of it like a sporting event. That's a cool idea. Yeah, you know, they kind of, if they treat it like a big sporting event, like it's a big thing and everyone's just going there to watch people die. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case with the Celestial Dragons. I like that idea a lot, Rubix. Moog, thank you for the £2. He said 800 divided by 3 is 233 countries. World government is 163 right now. That's nuts. I'm not entirely sure if I get what the connection is there. You're saying, oh, so you're saying 8? Oh, okay. Wow. Okay, I see what you're saying. So you're saying the 800 years, if they host one of these every 3 years, that means that currently there's 163 countries in the world government. Wow, that's, yeah. Damn, that's awful. That is really bad. That is really bad. What is that? 50? That is, no, not 50. 80, no, 90. That's 90, I had to do, I'm bad at math. I was doing the cross and shit in my head. Sorry. Make fun of me all you want. I suck at math. Yeah, that was 90 different countries possibly getting wiped out over the course of the last 800 years. Imagine that. 90 countries over the last 800 years. Mr. Rubix, thank you for the $10. He said, it doesn't make sense to me that Shanks or the other children are prizes. I think devil fruits make more sense. We know Kaido got his fruit during this incident. I think someone swapped the fruit for Shanks. Yeah, I agree with you there. That's probably the most likely. I just didn't have an immediate response like how that would make sense. But the treasure chest thing definitely has to happen before the end. Shattered Glass, thank you so much for the 20K. He said, yikes, no wonder Garp stays quiet about God Valley. Dude, that's what I'm saying. Like, you look at this event, and that's another big thing that comes out of this. It's like, you look at this event and you're like, yeah, if Garp was here, no fucking wonder he doesn't want to talk about this, man. This is awful. Like, no one would want to be a part of this. Garp had to witness this. And then this brings up another question. Remember, I had this original video. I talked about Rox, how Rox didn't do anything wrong. I had a copyright issue with that. It's not public anymore, but that video, I was talking about this a while back. Rox is, I said that Rox might not be evil. You know, Rox might not be a bad guy. Because if we look at everything that's happening here, it's like, you're telling me Rox was trying to stop this? I'm rooting for him. Right? And now you have Big Mom, you have the flashback with Kaido where Big Mom says to Kaido, Kaido, we're going to God Valley. Come on, get on the ship. You know? What, you know, they were tracking this hunt. They were tracking this what is this? The human hunt. So they maybe went there to stop it. It could even be that Rox explicitly went to this island to stop the human hunt. Right? Could have been. The next question is, how the fuck does Roger come into this? Because Roger was there for the God Valley incident. What happened? Where does Roger come in? So, man, a lot of this arc is now put in perspective. Like, is Rox a bad guy? Where does Roger fall in? Why did Rox and Roger have to fight? Why did Garp team up with Roger? How was Garp here? And then, like, what happened to Garling? What happened to the other guys in the world government? Where did Saturn go? Because Saturn's clearly in the audience. You know, completely unaged, by the way, once again. So, yeah. Spencer, thank you for the $2. He said Buccaneer topic. Jean Bart. Is it said what Jean Bart is? I thought he was just a giant. Well, not the real Jean Bart. Yeah, we don't know what he is, I guess. I'm still convinced, I mean, there's something else with him. I don't think he's a Buccaneer. I think it's pretty cut and dry. If Kuma's father and mother, you know, and he is like some of the last Buccaneers out there, I don't know if there would be one hiding among. I mean, I guess we did encounter Jean Bart at the slave auction. That is a possibility. You know, you might be right. You might be right. Could be a hidden thing, like they caught another one and then Law Freedom. I like that idea. Nomad Sherm, thank you for the $2. He said Ivankov pose. He's Frankie's dad. I love the pose here. The fact that he's wearing his the Frankie style Speedo. I think it would be very funny if there's some relation. What I think is interesting here, you know, Ginny. It could be just a manner of speaking, but Ginny refers to Ivankov as Big Bro. You know, could it be that Ginny is actually Ivankov's sister? Like actual blood sister? Ivankov does have purple hair. You know, if Ginny had pink and purple hair, not too far off. They could be blood related. More so than Kuma. I'd be willing to believe that. Mr. Rubix01, thank you for the $5, my friend. He said, last chapter when Bonnie told Saturn he killed her father, he goes, ah, you mean Kuma. Strongly implies he's not the biological dad. There you go. That's what I'm saying, bro. Is that in the last chapter or is that in this chapter? I thought it was in this one. Maybe in the last one. Previous chapter. No, it's in this one. Where's it happen? Did I miss it? Interesting. So you're the kind of pirates who stick together. That's another thing. Like, what is that? What's he mean by that? Yeah, here we go. Yes. Okay. Right. So Rubix pointed this out, and this lends itself to the Bonnie as a clone theory. Saturn, you killed my father. Ah, you're talking about Kuma, right? Good point, Rubix. That's a great point. You're talking about Kuma as if like it took him a second to put together what she meant by father, right? It's like, what do you mean your father? Oh, right, Kuma, the guy who made you. Yeah. Are you talking about Kuma, right? So it's like he had to clarify because we know that Kuma's her dad because she's told us many times, but she says it to him and he's like, huh? Like, oh, okay, you're talking about Kuma. So it implies that Kuma's not actually her dad. And I think that's the case. I think Kuma's not her dad. I think that she's a clone. So, yeah. But with that all being said, I think that's the last of the super chats. Thank you for that, though. That's a great catch. But yeah. The color page, giving him the red hair. I wonder what the official coloring is going to be for Garling. Anyway, guys. That is it for today. I hope you enjoyed the stream. I hope you enjoyed the breakdown, the explanation. We kind of went through things pretty quick. This was, I mean, it is an hour-and-a-half stream, granted, but we had a lot to cover today. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed all the discussions. I'm sorry I wasn't able to keep up with chat too much today. We did have a lot to get through, but I do hope you really enjoyed it. So Just before we go, let me just go through and see if there's any last minute questions I can get to. But aside from that, real quick. Oh, the other question Moog asked, is Whitebeard a Buccaneer? Look at him as a kid, built the same as Child Kuma. I think that's possible. I think it's possible Whitebeard might be half Buccaneer as well. I'd be willing to believe that. So I like that, Moog. So yeah, we got a break next week. Might do a theory review. So we'll do a theory review for the break. I will catch you guys then. Guys, thank you so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed the lesson from Professor Hidden today. And I will be catching you guys on the next stream. Have a great rest of your Sunday or whatever day it is for you right now. Have a great rest of your day. Have a wonderful night and a fantastic Romance Dawn. I will see you guys next time, and be well and stay breezy.